Well, welcome back to the videos. This is chapter 19, Respiratory System. So, what we did the last two chapters, we just kind of did an overview. What I'm going to do with this chapter is you had a lot of information in your practice questions, a lot of different things in your chapter. It's just really a detailed chapter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight some areas here. We're going to talk about potential questions that are going to be on your test. Study this video really well for your test. The entire test will come from this video. The questions that I'm giving you are going to be standard specific. In other words, these are things that you have to know about to meet the college standards for the class in terms of respiration. So we're going to kind of shake, rattle, and roll here a little bit, but let me give you the information that's going to be on your test. Once again, even more stuff in the chapter. So as you're doing the practice questions and stuff and going over the chapter, a lot of stuff to be learned, but this is the stuff that'll be on the test. Okay, now when we talk about respiration, we call it internal respiration. Okay, what's going on inside the body? So what is internal respiration? It's the exchange of gases between the blood and the cells of the body. Okay, so internal respiration, the exchange of gases between the blood and the cells of the body. Okay, now we're going to talk about a really important thing, the mucous membrane in the body. Okay, the mucous membrane does a lot of things. Okay, of course we have mucus in the inside of our mouth. Okay, when we feel the inside of our cheeks, we have a mucous membrane. We have a mucous membrane down through the esophagus. We have a mucous membrane back behind our sinuses. That's actually what releases the mucus that we have, quote unquote, snot that comes out. Okay. What happens is whenever it gets cold or we have bacteria in there, we release all that mucus and try to get rid of that bacteria. So, what does a mucous membrane actually do? Okay, well, it's kind of interesting. This is what the functions attributed to the mucous membrane that lines the nasal cavity. Okay, so I'm just dealing with the mucus in the sinus cavity here. It warms the incoming air. So it's really interesting because as we breathe the air in, that mucus lining on the inside actually warms the air. We've got to warm that air up closer to body temperature. All right, it filters particles out of the air. All right, and it also moistens the incoming air. So the mucous membrane inside of the sinuses, what does it do? It warms the air, okay, cleans out the particles, and moistens the air that we breathe in. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about when we talk about the larynx, okay, and the voice box. All right, the true vocal cords. All right, the true vocal cords are those that produce the sounds of the human voice. Now, we're going to talk about a little bit more about vocal cords. This is as we go down through the esophagus. As you already read your paper there, and you looked at a lot of different things. We have the larynx, goes into the trachea, which goes into the lungs. And so the true vocal cords are those that produce the sounds of the human voice. Now, where are the true vocal cords located? They're inferior, okay, inferior to the false vocal cords. All right, so once again, I don't know if you've done your questions for the chapter yet, but you'll realize that the vocal cords are actually a chamber that allows, it's actually a chamber that actually has an opening and closing. Okay, and we actually there's actually true vocal cords. How do we know what's the difference between the true and the false? The true vocal cords is where we actually have sound that goes through. The false vocal cords is actually attached to that. So what is the location of the true vocal cords? Inferior to the false vocal cords. Okay, so where's the location of the true? It's inferior. Okay, and inferior meaning below. So we actually have the set of vocal cords here that actually allow an air passage, but we don't use it as part of our voice. So inferior to the false vocal cords are the true vocal cords. Now, and I want to give you the spelling, C-R-I-C-O-L-D, okay? cricoid, I'm sorry, I knew that was wrong. cricoid, cricoid cartilages mark the lowest part of the larynx, okay? The cricoid, it's cricoid, cricoid, cartilage, mark the lowest part of the lowest portion of the larynx. So I kind of talked about that a little bit. You might take a look. There's a diagram in your book. If you have the 13th edition, it's page 738, where we see the larynx, the trachea, and then it talks about how it goes into the lungs. So once again, the cricoid, cricoid cartilage marks the lowest part, the lowest portion of the larynx. And so when we see this, okay, we see where the larynx comes in and then goes into the trachea, okay, and then goes into the vocal cords. Now, here's a question. I'll give you the answer to this. Which principle normally prevents the alveoli from collapsing during expiration? Okay, so once again, we've got a lot of little terms in here. The alveoli, once again, we have a picture of those in your book. No matter what version you have, respiratory, once again, the 13th edition, 793, but the alveoli is where we actually exchange. It's the little parts in the lungs that actually exchange the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. So the question is, what principle normally prevents the alveoli from collapsing during what expiration? So when we breathe air out, okay, and there's not something to hold that alveoli together, because we breathe in, it's like a balloon, okay, so we fill that up. So what is the principle that keeps those alveoli from collapsing? And it's actually the secretion, okay, of a surfactant. Now, it's kind of a big one, and once again, you know, I'm covering things pretty fast here, but a surfactant is something along the surface, okay? So what happens is when this alveoli, remember there's numerous alveoli in here. So when I breathe out, then we have this secretion, okay, this mucus that comes out of the walls of the alveoli that fill it up. And then what happens when the air comes in? It pushes that surfactant, okay, back up against the walls, all right? So once again, the secretion of the surfactant that keeps the alveoli from collapsing during expiration. The space between the two lungs, okay, the space between the two lungs. So you've got a lung here and a lung here, and you've got the trachea coming down, breaks off into the bronchial tubes, and then here's your two lungs. There's a space in the middle. The term for that space, okay, is mediastinum. Okay, it's a mediastinum. Okay, mediastinum. Now we kind of know that because it comes from the word medial. Medial means center, right? You remember your original terms. So that space in the middle of the two lungs is medial. M-E-D-I-A and then S-T-I-N-U-M. Okay, M-E-D-I-A-S-T-I-N-U-M. What are the most powerful stimuli for breathing? Okay. All right. So what causes us to actually breathe? What's the stimuli? What causes us to be able to breathe? You're like, well, you know, the part of the brain says, the medulla oblongata that controls different parts of the brain. We have voluntary, non-voluntary actions of the brain. So we have this part in the back of our brain that says, oh, we're going to control respiratory system and heartbeat. And so it's just, well, that's just going to make us breathe. No, we actually have a factor in here. We actually breathe based on pH. Isn't that amazing? We actually breathe based on pH. So low pH, okay, high CO2. So when our blood has a low pH, it means we have a high CO2 level. All right, it has a higher pH when we have more oxygen. So what's the stimuli for breathing? Low pH and high CO2. Low pH and high CO2. Now, let's move on. Once again, you know I'm hitting a lot of questions here. The basic rhythm of breathing is controlled by which portion of the brain? Okay? So the basic rhythm of breathing, not breathing itself, the basic rhythm of breathing is controlled by which portion of the brain? And the answer is it's a dorsal respiratory group of the medullary, medullary rhythmic sensor. Okay, so it's a dorsal respiratory group of the medullary, and that has to do with the medulla oblongata, but it's a medullary. Okay, and then the cool word here is rhythmicity, rhythmicity center. So we see a couple of key terms here, all right, but it's a dorsal respiratory group of the medullary rhythmic center. Now another answer on that is the ventral respiratory group, but you need to know that it's the dorsal respiratory group of the medullary rhythmic center. The respiratory membrane across which gases diffuse is very thin and is made up of what? Okay, so the respiratory membrane across which the gases diffuse is very thin and is made up of what? And the answer is alveolar cell membranes, capillary membranes, and fused basement membranes. All right, so once again, here's the question. The respiratory membrane across which gases diffuse, all right, is very thin and is made up of what? Alveolar cell membranes, capillary membranes, and fused basement membranes. Now, I'm gonna address about towards the end of this tape here. I'm gonna address just 4 or 5 questions, give you the question, give you the answer, and then come back and do some discussion. So that'll kind of help you as you're taking notes as we go. Whether oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood or not is dependent upon what? Okay, the question. Whether oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood or not. So not all the oxygen that goes into the alveoli goes directly into the blood. What determines that? This is the partial pressure of oxygen in the lungs and in the blood. So we determine the partial pressure, the brain determines the partial pressure of oxygen in the lungs and in the blood to determine if the alveoli are going to diffuse oxygen into the blood. Next question. Within the blood, oxygen is primarily transported blank, while the bulk of carbon dioxide is transported blank. And the answer is, within the blood, oxygen is primarily transported as oxyhemoglobin, OXY and then hemoglobin. And within the blood, oxygen is primarily transported as oxyhemoglobin, while the bulk of the carbon dioxide is transported as bicarbonate ions, bicarbonate, bicarbonate ions. So once again, let me give you a couple more. We'll come back and talk about them. What is the first structure in the respiratory sequence? It's the pharynx. The pharynx is the first structure in the respiratory sequence. Which structures play the greatest role in warming and in humidifying air? Okay. Which structures play the greatest role in warming and humidifying air? Okay. It's C-O-N-C-H-A-E. The conchae. C-O-N-C-H-A-E. Okay. C-O-N-C-H-A-E. What does that do? Plays the greatest role in warming and humidifying air. Last question on this video. Okay. The area directly superior to the soft palate. All right. The area directly superior to the soft palate, all right, is the nasopharynx, okay, N-A-Z-O-P-H-A-R-Y-N-X, okay, the area directly superior, superior meaning above, the soft palate is the nasal pharynx. Well, we've covered a bunch of the questions, and we still have a lot of discussion left, but we're going to stop right there as we're taking notes, and I'll see you on the next video.